Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode, we finished working on our power management system. And in this episode, we want to start with something new. We are going to start working on the resource gathering system. So this is a very major and important part of any RTS game. And the thing is that every RTS game does it a little bit differently. So we have games like Age of Empires that have different resources, and you simply assign different villagers to go and mine all of these resources. Other games have only one type of resource, like Red Alert, and you simply have some kind of harvester that goes there and collects everything. Actually, in Red Alert, you have two kinds. You have the regular gold and you have diamonds. But again, this is a different style. Some games require you to build different mines on top of nodes in the wild, or maybe some kind of wood chopping outpost in the woods. So it really depends on the game, on the style. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. And obviously, I cannot show you all of these different kinds of resource gathering approaches. We're going to do something simple. We're going to do something that will teach you how to create such a resource gathering system. And then you can simply build upon it, and you can expand and you can add different things, and you can implement whatever you want in your game. Before we start with this, I have a few adjustments like in any episode. This is not exactly adjustment. This is just something that I promised you. We had these different errors that appear when we stop the game. And I just want to mention that these are not real errors because they're not happening in real time. They're happening when we stop the game from the Unity editor. And this is something that will not happen in a real game, because in a real game, we're going to have a main menu. We are going to properly exit the game. We're going to save the game. So all of these exceptions are not going to happen. But because we stop the game from the Unity editor, we can get different weird things, because usually we don't use too many null checks. So let's see how to fix them, just because they bother us sometimes. I found that the way to reproduce them is by running the game and building at least two buildings. And then if we stop the game, we're going to get these errors. So sometimes we need to fix one error to get the other ones, right? It's not going to show all of them at once. So we have some kind of issue with the audio source. And I assume that it simply tried to play some kind of sound, but we stopped the game, so it lost the reference. We can simply click on it and it will bring us to line 76. We can double click on it inside the sound manager. We can see that it tries to use this channel. So the simplest fix will be to check if it's not null. We can simply do extra building channel and this. By simply specifying the name of this object, we're simply checking if it exists. So it's going to be the same as if it's not null, right? So you can use this or you can use this. It's basically the same thing, but because we want to be a bit more straightforward, we're going to use this and basically check if it's not null, only then use this extra building channel. We're going to save and we're going to see if it solved the problem, but now we can get other errors as well. So we start the game, we build, and we stop. And this time we got something weird. And again, this may happen because of specific situations. Again, maybe it was trying to get this clip or this source and it did not find it. We're going to add some kind of if and check if both of them exist. And only after we know both of them exist, we're going to play this. Now, you can be a bit smarter, but this is not relevant for these kind of situations, because inside of the game we always are going to have this, but you can also add else and then add some kind of debug. Missing audio source or this. Now again, if you get this exception, you will simply double click on it and it will bring you over here, so you don't need this error. But sometimes you can add these debugs to know exactly what is the problem. Maybe you forgot to assign a clip or something. But with adding this, it's not going to give us this error. Now again, these errors can happen in different situations. Maybe I'm going to play a sound and stop the game in the middle. It's going to give me some kind of error. Otherwise, it's not going to give me an error. So I try to reproduce all of these different situations. Now we stop the game and let's see if we have something else. Okay, we have some kind of problem with the buy slot. So we can double click on it. It will bring us to line 42. And it probably tries to get this component, but this entire buy slot is already destroyed. So what we can do is simply try to understand who is calling this method. We can right click on it, find all references, and we can see that it's being called inside this method. And this method is basically triggered when this event is triggered. Now I can already see the problem. The problem is that we are subscribing to this event, right? And to this event, but we're not unsubscribing. And it's good practice to always unsubscribe from an event, because maybe the object will be destroyed, but it will still be subscribed to this event. And then it's going to try to call this event when the object is already destroyed. So you can do this inside the onDestroy or onDisable. Both of them are built-in methods. We're going to do this inside the onDestroy. So simply copy both of these lines. And to unsubscribe, we're simply going to replace this with a minus. And this is good practice. So any script that you register to an event, also make sure to unregister. And it's going to get rid of this problem. Again, you can also go over here and simply have some kind of null check, right? You can say if getComponentImage is null, then don't do this. But there is no need because we have a bunch of components. We don't want to do a lot of if checks. So we're going to see if it works, if it helps. And at this point, we don't get any more errors, but you can get different situations when you still have them. And all you need to do is click on them, see what is the problem, add some kind of null check, and this will usually solve the problem. And again, I'm talking about errors that happen when you stop the game, not in the middle of the game, because if they happen in the middle of the game, it means that there is actually something wrong with your code and it can affect your game. So if we get more of these, we're going to fix them. For now, I can't even reproduce them. So let's start with the resource gathering. First of all, we want to create some kind of prefab that will basically start with harvesting. It will create this small unit that will go and harvest. And there will be a few steps to this entire system, so it will probably take me a few episodes. The first thing, we want to build this building. So like we always do, we can go to our prefabs and we have our command center or power plant. We can simply drag it into the scene. And the reason we drag it is because we want to use it to create our own supply center, right? Now, we are not going to use this one. We're just going to use it as a reference to see what we need, what is missing. For our supply center, we're going to access the generals package that I gave you, the ones for the mods. Again, you can use this for your projects, but you cannot really use this for your final game because it doesn't belong to me. But inside, we're going to enter into, let's say, Europe, structures, and we have the different buildings. We also used our command center and power plant models from this pack. So we can find this supply center over here. We're going to double click on it. You will probably not see this material because this is something I created, but we're going to do this together. So let me just delete it. You are going to find this model. And if we drag it into the scene, we can see that it's very, very big and it doesn't really fit the other models. So we can simply click on this model and we can change the scale factor over here. I think the best one will be 0.2, so we make it much smaller and we apply. And now it will be the same size as the other models. Again, you can play around with this. And at the end of the day, you will have your own assets, your own models. This is just for following this tutorial. So now that we changed the size of the model, we can actually use it. We can see it over here. Let's unpack it because we don't want to change the original model. And we can rename it to Supply Center or whatever you want. Now if we expand it, we have all the different models. So this first parent is not a model, it's just an empty game object, but inside we have all the different models and we want to rotate them. But in order to rotate all of them together, we need to add them into some kind of parent. So you can either create an empty object and then drag all of them into this object, or a simpler way is to select all of these children, right click and create empty parent, and it's going to place all of them into a parent. So let's rename this to models. And now we have all of these things and we can rotate the actual model. So we're going to rotate this to face this way. Maybe let's see our command center. And we can see that our command center is facing this direction. So it's rotated 315 on the Y, and then it has these positions over here. Let's do the same. So 315. And we're going to change this. So this is the position inside of the parent. Now, these values work because these are the same models within the same pack. If you have other models, you should play around with this. And I showed you in the first episode that we created our first prefab, how to actually position it correctly inside of the parent. But now we can simply do this by setting these values because we know that these values are good for these models. Okay, you can see the command center has it as well. Now we want to give this some kind of color, and we are going to use this image. Again, it doesn't have any textures, so we're going to create a new material and we're going to name it Supply Center Matte. And we're going to drag this texture on the base map, and we're going to drag this material on the actual model. Now it's not going to look the best, but we are going to play a bit with the tiling, and I found that just by changing this to 0.1, it's going to give us this clean view. Now again, this is just so you can follow along. This is not a nice looking asset. You should add windows, maybe animations. And how to add animations? Simply have some kind of object inside that can be animated, right? If you have some kind of antenna over here, then just rotate it. If you have some kind of lift or some kind of electronical arm, then you can simply move it. For us, we don't really have too much to play around because all of these are pretty static. But if we have something, we can simply animate it by go to the animation, create an animation, and simply play it when it's instantiated. Now, I also want to remove this cargo. This is some kind of thing over here, and I want to delete it. You can place it somewhere else, like here or here. I want to delete it because I want the harvester to go over here and empty all the resources and then go back harvesting. So again, you can play around with these. You can delete some of them. Even this one, I don't know why we need this. You can delete this. We have the glass, so we can give a different material for this glass. I think we have some kind of debug UI. We can add this, right? You can do whatever you want. You can add more materials. Let's just leave it this way. Now let's see what our command center has so we can apply all of this to the supply center. So I'm just doing this together with you, but this is basically the way you create new buildings. You should know how to do it by yourself. So we have this constructible UI. Let's Control D, duplicate it, and drag it to be a child. And we're going to position it. So first we need to enable the health tracker so we can actually see how it looks, and then position the entire constructible UI on top of this. Let's say 1, 1, and 2, 15. Maybe this, or maybe it's too high. Let's make it a bit lower, something like that. Again, you can play around with this. 2, or maybe 1.5, 1.7, something like this. Let's say 2. Again, you can play around with this. And now we're going to disable this, but leave the UI itself. Let's also rename it so it's without this 1. Now we can also see that we need a tag, this constructible tag. We need a constructible script. We need a box collider, and we need the power user. So we're going to add all of this on the supply center. So power user, constructible, and the constructible tag. We can apply it for the children, and I'm not going to apply it for the children because only the main parent should be a constructible. Now we're going to drag the health tracker. So we take this health tracker and drag it inside. We're going to set the max health to 100. We're going to make sure it's in preview mode because all the prefabs are in preview mode at the beginning. We're going to decide that the power usage will be 100. So it's going to consume power and it's going to be 100. And of course, we also need this enum, this building type. So we're going to open our constructible and we're going to add this enum over here. Where is it? Building type. Let's control click on building type. And this we can find inside our object database. So we're simply going to add supply center, save, and now we're going to select the supply center. Next, we want to add a box collider and make sure it actually goes around this place. Now I'm not going to do it all this way because I want the harvester to enter this area. So I'm just going to do it like this. And make sure that it's also right over here. So that's good enough. Next, we want to add this into our database. It's not a real database, but we can find it over here, the scriptable object. So we have the command center and power plant. We're going to add a new one, and we're going to rename this to supply center. It's going to be a supply center. This ID should be higher, right? Because this is 0, this is 1, so this should be 2. And we can add a description. We can add the actual new prefab. We still did not create it as a prefab, so let's make sure that everything is ready. Oh yes, we also need to add a nav mesh obstacle to one of these models because we can go to our command center and see that one of them has this nav mesh obstacle. So simply go to one of your models, the main one, let's say this one, the supply center faction, and add a nav mesh obstacle. I think this is all. Yeah, so let's take the supply center and let's drag it into our prefabs folder. And now we have a new prefab. So now we can delete this. We can go to our, where is it? Database. and drag the prefab, or just select it over here. Supply center, this one, I'm not sure, so let's just lock this and drag our actual prefab. Supply center. Now I don't know why it looks like this, but it has this material, so maybe this is just a bug. So now that we have this, we also want to add requirements. It will cost us, let's say, for now, just 100. We still did not play with the different finance aspect, so let's just keep it at 100. The build dependency will also be the command center, so we must have a command center to build this supply center. And the important thing right now is to change the size, because if we drag our command center, we can see that it takes 3 grids and then 3 grids. And that's why we have 3 on 3. If we have our power plant, we can see that it's 3 on 3, right? Because we are also making sure that it has enough room. For example, if we place it over here, we don't want to build anything next to it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But for the supply center, it's much larger. So if we place it over here, we can see that it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this should be 4 on 5 or 5 on 4. I'm not sure. Let's just leave it at 5 on 4. And if it gives us a problem, we're going to change it to be 4 on 5. Okay, so I'm just not sure which is the X and which is the Y. So now we have this entry inside, and in order to actually build this, we also need to go to our UI, and we need to add this new component, this new option. So we go into our buildings, the building system, slot area buildings, and we simply add a new one. So we're going to duplicate this one, so Control D. We're going to rename it to be supply center, and we don't need to position it because this entire thing is a grid layout group, so it will automatically position them. So it's just enough that we have it here. It's going to automatically position it. And now we also want to change the image. And I think we need to go back inside, imports, generals, and Europe, structures, supply center. Is this? Yes, we need to import it first as a sprite. And now we can go to our supply center and change the image. Where is it? Supply center. Supply center. Now I think we don't want to use this. We want to use this version. So let's find it. I think it's not this one. We should not use this one. Okay. We should use something else. Structures. Let's go back. Oh, yes. We need to go to user interface, images, structures. Let's see. Where was it? Let's just click on our command center and see what we used. Command center, we use this one. And where we can find it, we can find it inside user interface, images, build buttons, active EU. So go to the same place, or you can simply click on the command center image and double click here, and it's going to bring you to this actual folder. And now we can look for the supply ES command center, ES supply center. Now you need to import it as a sprite. And we also want to find the second version, which is the unavailable version. So we can go over here, unavailable, and it will bring us to another one, the inactive folder. And again, supply center, sprite, apply. So this is the inactive version. And now we simply set it over here. So we have the supply center, and then we have the supply center for the available sprite, and we have the supply center for the unavailable, which is this one. Now again, obviously it doesn't really match the color of our prefabs, but again, this is just for this tutorial. You will have your own models, your own sprites, but now we also have this one. Now we want to make sure that everything here is basically the same. It will build this thing. Oh yes, the important thing is if we click on the supply center by slot, we also need to get the real item ID, and this should be the same item ID that we have in our database, right? So the supply center is ID 2. So over here inside the UI, you also need to say ID 2. At this point, this should work. And we should see it working. Let's just think if we did not forget anything. Well, let's just try, and if we have some errors, we can fix them. So we cannot build these because they are dependent on the command center, but if we build a command center, we can see both of them. And now if I build this one, you can see it's rather big. Let's just see if the actual grid, yes, I think we had a problem. You can see it should be able to be built over here. And this is not good. Yes, so I think that we should switch it from 5.4 to 4.5. Okay? And now let's try it again. So yes, this makes more sense. We don't want to allow to build it too close. This makes more sense. So now we also have this supply center. And we can see the sound. There's probably also, let's go to our power manager and we can see that, not sound and power manager. Yes. So our power usage is 150 because the command center is taking 50 power and this one takes 150. Now, if we build a power plant, then we're going to get 200, but we are only left with 50. So at this point, we should also build another one. And of course, pay attention to the money, to the credits. So at this point, when we build this supply center, it should create some kind of harvester. And then this harvester will start harvesting. Obviously, we're going to be able to select it and point on some kind of resource, and it's going to harvest it, and it's going to come back over here. And this will basically be our resource gathering system. So at this point, we have this building. Obviously, you can play around with this. You can make it look good. You can add animations. But this is basically how you build an extra building. And for now, this is just a building. It doesn't do anything. It just consumes power. But we are going to add more functionality to it as we continue with our episodes. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we're going to start with the actual harvester unit. It will require a very specific state machine, so it's not going to use the infantry state machine. It's going to have its own state machine, and this way you're going to be able to create these resource gatherers for any game and make them work with your supply center. So we're going to continue little by little. So thank you again for watching and following this series. You can subscribe, you can leave a like, you can become a member of the channel, and I'll see you next time.